All right, my name is Caleb Courtney. I'm currently the chair of the Society for Pentecostal Studies committee, known as the Library and Research Committee. And I'm here with Darren Rogers, who has been a member of that committee for a long time. And Darren is the director of the Flower Pentecostal Heritage Center of the Assemblies of God since 2005. He has his MA in Theological Studies from the Assemblies of God Theological Seminary, a Juris Doctorate from University of North Dakota School of Law. He's written a book on the history of Pentecostalism in North Dakota called Northern Harvest. And he's married. His wife Desiree is an ordained minister, and he's got some kids. And it's our pleasure to welcome you, Darren, today to teach us about the Consortium of Pentecostal Archives website. Do you want to share a few words before we get started, just about yourself and how you ended up being where you are?
Sure. So I've been here for 20 years now at the Heritage Center, kind of like Indiana Jones looking for lost treasures, so that we make these materials accessible to historians, to people in the pew, to church leaders. By most standards, we're the largest Pentecostal archives in the world. We have materials in 178 languages in our vault, in our collection. But we've also been a leader in digitizing materials and making materials accessible online so that researchers don't have to come to our vault or another location. You can access Pentecostal research materials anywhere in the world. So the Consortium of Pentecostal Archives is something that we helped launch back in 2011. Our website went live, but it actually started, the ruminations regarding the desire to start something like this started at a library and archives meeting at SPS in 2008 at Duke University. So in 2011, the website went live, pentecostalarchives.org. We started small, piggybacking off of some of our existing proprietary software and our website. But then in 2023, we had received a grant from a foundation to radically update the website. So we ended up hiring Viridian, a company in New Zealand, which specializes in these kinds of websites. They have created these websites for various national libraries and state historical societies. So we have a top tier website for making accessible Pentecostal PDFs, publications, books, periodicals, yearbooks, minute books, etc. And the Consortium of Pentecostal Archives, which operates this, consists of various archives around the world. A Church of God, Pentecostal Holiness, Assemblies of God, Foursquare, etc. We've created this consortium so that we could make a website by Pentecostal archives for Pentecostal archives, so that we thought if we could create something from scratch that would be our ideal, that would benefit us, benefit the churches, benefit scholars, what would it look like? So we started out with that question, and then we ended up creating what now is pentecostalarchives.org. And that was back in 2011 that was first launched, about 14 years ago.
So Darren, what you've done and the people that have worked with you have done is incredible. And the current committee at SPS for the Library and Research Committee for Society for Pentecostal Studies really wants to draw some attention to the amazing new website and how it can help scholars of Pentecostalism and history and theology and biblical studies and enrich their research. And so I've asked you today, and you've thankfully agreed to take us through the website and just give us the basics of what's on there and how we can use it. So if you can share your screen and just take us through that, I think that'd be helpful for all of us.
Okay. So here we have the Consortium of Pentecostal Archives website. This is the homepage, and as you can see, there is a search bar. Search the collection. That's the starting point, and it's very simple. It's very fun to use. You'll see all kinds of different searches there. One would be Azusa Street. Another might be Acts 2. So you can search historical terms, you can search biblical references, you can search for people, put things in quotes if you want the entire term to be searched. And you can see on the left-hand side, there are various ways to refine the search, but right in the middle, you can see the search results. And the search results here have the context, an image of the context for each search result. And that is extremely helpful because that means you don't have to wade through and go into every single search result to see if it's a relevant hit for you. So here you can see, Acts 2 is there, Acts 2, and you might see, oh, wait a minute, this example from 1900 is right on point. So I want to hit this line right over there, and then you'll see little yellow marks, highlights that show up. That's the hit. So then you say, yeah, I really like that. And then you can go up here to the PDF download tab right over there. And then that will download the document for you, and then you can save that. You can print it off, use it however you want. This happens to be from John Alexander Dowie's periodical. He established Zion City back in the 1890s, which was an important proto-Pentecostal organization or city in the Chicago area.
So Darren, this brings up a question. What kind of sources are we searching through? Like this is not Google. We're searching very specifically through something here. What is this?
Yeah. So this is a database of Pentecostal or Pentecostal related publications. There's currently 638,000 pages of these PDF files, these documents. They're all OCR'd and they're searchable. And it's extremely useful for people who want to research Pentecostal history, missiology, theology, anything related to Pentecostal studies. And it's very easy to isolate specifically what you want using the search engine, using the structure here. For instance, if you only are looking at materials from the 1920s, you can simply say, I don't need all 6,100 results. I'm going to just look at the 1920s. You get 1,200 results there. If you say, well, that's still too many, I want to only look at materials from the Church of God, Cleveland, Tennessee, you can do that as well. And then only Church of God results come up. If you say, I only want to look at serials, which would be periodicals, yearbooks, etc., then you can further narrow the results. And as you can see, it's incredibly valuable. So if you go back to the homepage here, you can see that the different contributing archives are listed here, starting with the one which happens to be the Flower Pentecostal Heritage Center, which has the most pages on the site, about 333,000 pages. Then the Dixon Pentecostal Research Center with the Church of God Archives is providing the second largest number of pages, and so on. And the various archives don't only contribute materials from their own denominational affiliation. Some have contributed from the broader movement. For instance, the Flower Pentecostal Heritage Center has contributed to the website here about 22,000 pages of Slavic materials in Russian and Ukrainian primarily. And those are including Assemblies of God, but also other Slavic Pentecostal unions in the U.S. and in Europe. So there's a lot of materials here. You can also search uh, according to serial title. So if you go to the top tab and look at serials, these are all the different serials, magazines, yearbooks, etc., that are on the website. So if you want to go to one in particular, for instance, let's see, the Apostolic Faith from Los Angeles, California, which is also known as the Azusa Street uh, Mission or the Azusa Street newspaper. You can search for Acts there and search there and just search within that particular periodical. So here are various hits from the Azusa Street newspaper relating to the book of Acts.
So,
And
Darren, when you say that you've digitized some Slavic materials,
mhm,
that introduces another degree of searching complexity.
mhm.
So you'd have to make sure that Axe is also in a Slavic language to find those
Yes,
resources, right?
absolutely.
Hmm.
So if you go browse, you can also browse by books. Here's the book titles, and I'll show you various things. You can also browse by denomination. Here's Assemblies of God USA, the books that are loaded here from the AGUSA, and the serial titles that are loaded from the AGUSA. You can also browse by country and by date. If you're looking for materials just from a certain week in 1920, you can pull up and search through all of those materials from that certain date, or you can browse by language. So if we go to, for instance, Russian language serials, and here's the different Russian language serials we have. If you want to browse through a particular serial, we can, well, let's see, go The Way of Faith. And we'll just look for Vera, which is faith in Russian, and do a search for that. And so we end up with various, results for Vera or faith in Russian there. Here's more results for Vera or faith in numerous publications. Since I didn't have a Russian language keyboard, I just ended up copying something from the title there. But this is incredibly valuable because we hired a historian from Ukraine who moved to America to gather and place materials online from Slavic lands. And this is incredibly valuable for people outside the West because now, for the first time, a lot of these materials are accessible online. So people can do research not just through Western English language materials, but this platform allows people to do research through materials in multiple languages. The company which created this website for us, which we hired, Veridian, has also created websites for the National Library of Israel, and they have materials from the diaspora all across the world on their website. So we've created a platform that will allow people from countries all across the world to place materials in languages, hundreds of languages online. So I see this as a way to apply the indigenous church principle to Pentecostal research so that people around the world can have access to materials from their countries in their languages for free. So this will allow Bible schools around the world to place materials on a platform that makes the materials they want to make accessible to their students for free online. This is an exciting beginning, I think, to a way to really value and warrant the voices of Pentecostals in all these different contexts so that we can all better understand the full story of the full gospel.
It also, I think, can remind English-speaking researchers and Pentecostals that Pentecostalism is a phenomenon of many languages. And a global one. Um, so I really appreciate that that this is happening. That this is a part of this website.
I love it. If you look at French, the French Assemblies of God Archives has put Viens et Voix and Pentecote online. So, if you look at various phrases in French, for instance, here's, Pentecost or Pentecote in French. You start looking through there and you start seeing different themes. You start seeing that there are multiple identities, different issues come up in different cultures than they do in the American context. Theological themes, historical themes, etc. And it's incredibly valuable to have at your fingertips access to all of these materials at one time.
So, Darren, I see that we are not currently logged into this website. So you don't have to be a member. You don't have to register or anything to access this. Is that correct?
Correct. You don't have to register. It's free access. However, there is the ability to register. There's two different levels of registration. Level one is very simple. It will allow you to do text correction. If you see that the OCRing or that the digitization didn't correctly capture all the text so that a letter is off here or there, you can go in and correct some of those yourself. Level two registration allows access to the Pentecostal Evangel from 1970 through 2014, which is the Assemblies of God weekly magazine. And our World Missions Department requires that to be under password restrictions so that we protect some missionaries there. But for almost all materials, for most purposes, people would not need to register to use the website.
Well, it's a phenomenal resource, one that the committee that I'm a part of thinks is extremely valuable, and one that you've heavily invested in your role at the Flower Pentecostal Heritage Center. And thank you for that. And thanks for taking us through this today. Any last words for people who might be embarking on their first search here?
Well, I encourage people to have fun on the website. It's designed for the purpose of making Pentecostal research easy, free, and fun. And if you have any materials that you would like to place on the website, contact one of the member archives, and perhaps one of us can help place those materials that you're wanting on the website. Or if you are the director of the Pentecostal Archives, contact one of us, and we can help you become a member so that your archive can also place materials on the website. And our website helps drive traffic to all of the different member websites. We're not a replacement for the Pentecostal Archives, but we're a tool for the Pentecostal Archives to make our materials accessible and to gain greater visibility.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Darren. Thank you for your time today. And I've really enjoyed learning about this. I'm sure many other people will. And we will only see this website grow in resources. It'll be interesting to see a year from now, if we look back on this video, how much it's grown. I know you're updating it constantly. So thanks so much. And yeah, thank you for today.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Jim Darlak, and I'm the library director at Vanguard University in Southern California. And I'm here with Dara Delgado. And Dara, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Dara Delgado. I am assistant professor of American religion at the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, part of the philosophy and religious studies department here. I teach their larger survey classes, which are exploring religions, but I'm also the person charged with focusing on American religious expression through race and gender as well.
Awesome. So we're talking today about the Consortium of Pentecostal Archives website and the vast number of resources that they've made available from different Pentecostal charismatic organizations worldwide. And wanted to talk specifically with scholars about how they've used the archives in their own work. And we heard that you used it in some research that you've done, and would love to hear about the project that you were working on and how you used it.
Yeah, so many moons ago, while at Tyndale University College and Seminary, I was, I guess, I don't know if you say majoring, but concentrating in their Pentecostal studies track. I chose to attend Tyndale because one, it was offering a Pentecostal studies program, and I was very much interested in pursuing that as an area of study, but also because I knew that I wanted to do a thesis that would prepare me for my PhD work. When I went into the program, I had no clue what it was that I wanted to study. Truth be told, while I was a practicing Pentecostal, I had never done the intellectual work of Pentecostal studies. And I had not found out about it until I was finishing up my first master's at another seminary when a professor advised me that there was a whole world of Pentecostal studies out there that I needed to be involved in because I was so curious about it. Once I was at the thesis mark at Tyndale, it was under the advisement of Dr. Van Johnson that I began to explore some of the questions around Black Pentecostalism that were kind of burning for me. And little by little, bit by bit, I came to the question of the hymnal tradition in the Pentecostal assemblies of the world. Not really sure how I was going to tackle that. Ultimately, I came to the conclusion that I wanted to explore how that early hymnody was kind of in a lens to look at how the most early practitioners were trying to define, redefine, package their faith and their tradition and their doctrine. And so looking at the early hymnody of the Pentecostal assemblies of the world, I was able to get a good sense of how this early church tradition was trying to think about their faith in light of worship. The archives were super helpful to me because although I had done the bulk of the research probably a year before, and I had come in contact with early hymns and newsletters and things of that nature, the archives provided me with a way of contextualizing the Pentecostal assemblies of the world. So while there isn't a bank, if you will, for the PAW yet in the archives, there was an opportunity for me to see how the PAW was situated within not only a conversation maybe with their counterpart, the Church of God in Christ, but also with the Assemblies of God and the Church of God and because I'm doing this program in Canada, right, looking even at how it shows up as an apostolic oneness tradition within a Canadian context, right, how to think about it as a global movement or tradition, I should say. And so the archives provided me a way of contextualizing one tradition within the larger Pentecostal tradition.
That's awesome. What did you, just out of curiosity, what did you find in seeing those contextual connections?
Yeah, so it was interesting. I like to think of it as breadcrumbs, right? There was never this mic dropping statement, right? Like either they're heretics, like that's kind of what we might think of, right? Given the history of some of the contentions in the movement. But there were, I thought, curious references around noting when there might have been a service or a revival. Acknowledging when someone was a part of the tradition, right? The expansiveness of its geography. So again, as a researcher, this all sounds exciting to me because I am writing this in Canada, having grown up in the tradition, the Pentecostal assemblies of the world in New York State, and then reading about folks on the West Coast who identified with the organization was back in the 1930s. To me, just showed just the rich history of not only the PAW, but the PAW in relationship with the larger Pentecostal tradition. And so it was those types of nuggets, right? It wasn't, again, the mic drop, but it was definitely significant because whether they liked each other all the time or not, or agreed with each other doctrinally or not, there was this nod, there was this acknowledgement that they're doing something in terms of advancing the kingdom. We recognize the credentials of that particular minister as being part of the PAW. So we have this history where we're always thinking about the Trinitarians and the oneness kind of not quite getting along. But the archives show that there might be something different where, yes, they weren't going to probably always agree doctrinally, but there was I guess for me, I saw it as a mutual sense of respect, right? To even acknowledge that there's a service, to even acknowledge that someone has credentials, to even acknowledge that this group is going on at the same time as ours. I think that there's something more that needs to be unpacked there, and the
Mm,
archives showed that to me as I was digging through trying to find out how to think about this tradition in light of the larger.
that's fascinating. So it's not like you're finding swaths of articles on a particular topic,
Yeah.
but you're finding that ground level um, day-to-day usage or
Yeah.
reference to things, and that's giving
Yeah.
you
The
context.
connective tissue, if you will, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fascinating. So when you used the consortium website, how did you go about finding stuff about the PAW and your research?
Yeah, I mean, I start off kind of like what I tell my students when they're going in, right? Like there's the grand umbrella, so I just put in Pentecostal Assemblies of the World. Well, if you put in of, you're gonna get a lot of.
Mm,
If you
mhm,
put in Pentecostal, you're gonna get a lot of Pentecostal. And the same thing happened with PAW. There was interesting when you look up PAW in the archives, you're gonna get a lot of references to Pa or Papa, which I found that was a geographical location and not the
mhm,
PAW. So you gotta be careful with those little things, right? It's like, oh,
mhm,
lots of PAW, not the PAW that we're thinking.
mhm,
And so being able to narrow the search, so again, not using just PAW as the shorthand, but actually putting in Pentecostal Assemblies of the World. One of the things I did do was look at the denominational list. Once that
mhm,
didn't yield too much, when I noticed that the PAW or the Pentecostal Assemblies of the World wasn't in the denominational list, then I just got a little bit more creative in terms of the advanced search, right?
mhm,
So now I'm looking in this particular denomination using these word phrases to get what I need out of it. And that's just good old research practice, right? You just
mhm,
kind of know what you're looking for, specific names. Once I found a name in one reference, I would then apply it and look for it in another context. And that was where I started to see patterns of, again, maybe referring to a revival that was happening, an
mhm,
individual that was being recognized. So using the acronyms don't always serve, but getting it down to, okay, well, maybe they'll show up in this particular reference with the AG and did. And
mhm.
that helped me to be able to make other connections that I was able to take outside of the archives and then look in other spaces to help me build maybe an argument or a claim or just even a portrait of someone that I was trying
Mhm.
to construct.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Working with students, it's always fun to try to help them to see you're doing research on a topic. It's not just typing in the topic and getting stuff.
Exactly.
It's getting context, figuring out what that context is, using contextual clues to search in other things that are ancillary, and
Yeah.
you can find some rich stuff when
Okay.
you just go beyond the keyword search or you just go beyond
Exactly.
that. That's awesome.
And not be afraid of those rabbit trails, right? Like
Yeah.
that's always the best. Yeah. And advanced search will always be your friend. Always, always, always.
So do you have any tips or anything that, I mean, we just talked about the advanced search and
Mhm.
looking by denomination and particular tradition there. Do
Yeah.
you have any other advice or anybody that would be coming to the site?
Yeah, if you have some names are always key, right?
Mm,
So oftentimes, I mean, I tend to do denominational kind of histories, if you will. But sometimes a name will yield something. Now you have to be careful during certain periods, certain names were very popular. Um,
hmm
but those will help. Having the dates available will help you narrow your search.
hmm
And honestly, letting folks know what it is that you are interested in, you can find names and dates of things that you didn't even know would be helpful to your research. So,
hmm
we recently lost David Daniels, who was a researcher, writer, Pentecostal historian extraordinaire.
hmm
As I say that, I tear up. He was wonderful because he would hear of my work at SPS and suggest folks I never even imagined
hmm
thinking about as part of my work. If they felt tangential or I just didn't know that they existed. And those types of conversations will give you, you don't know who you're looking for until someone tells you.
hmm
You can
hmm
go back to something like the archives, look up that person, look up the dates, look up the place maybe that you know that they preached that one sermon. And that will take you down a wonderful and rich road to be able to build your case, build your argument, build your context that you're trying to construct for your research.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for your passion in doing your research, and thank you for sharing with us about how you've used this website. Thank you so much, Dara.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Dr. Kristen Welch. I serve as the Director of Archives and Research for the International Pentecostal Holiness Church. And I'd like to introduce one of our speakers, Dr. Daniel Isagrig. He's an associate professor for Oral Roberts University. He's written several books, and I think that you will find the tips that he has to share with you today are very, very helpful for doing research and understanding all the possibilities for research on the Pentecostal Consortium. So welcome, and I hope you enjoy his talk.
Hi, I'm Dr. Daniel Isgrig. I am an associate professor at Oral Roberts University. My work as a Pentecostal historian has been greatly enriched by the Consortium of Pentecostal Archives. When I started my dissertation researching the Assemblies of God, I was using the Flower Pentecostal Heritage Center website that had full text searches of Assemblies of God materials. The consortium had just come online and there were materials from other places, but at the time, the full text search there was really helpful. I gained a lot from just looking at and being able to search for key terms and concepts and people within the search capabilities of the Flower. But as my research expanded beyond the Assemblies of God and looked into other denominations, it was really extremely helpful to have the consortium that had materials from many different denominations. Most of the early papers are present there, and particularly is the Azusa Street Apostolic Faith paper. And so by using the consortium, I had access to a much broader picture of the research and the topics that I have been researching. And so it became really very valuable to me as a researcher. Most of my work I've done since then has all been due to the consortium. It's not unfair to say that without the consortium, I would not be a scholar. And it is that powerful and that helpful. And so some of the ways I've used it are usually I'm doing trying to find some understanding of what Pentecostals believed about certain aspects of doctrine or theology or sort of cultural commentary. And so the consortium provides this powerful search tool that I can put in all kinds of phrases. I can put in concepts, theological terms, Bible verses I'm looking for, and things like that. And it helps me to locate amongst that vast pool of information where those conversations are within magazines and books and minute books and things like that. So it has been extremely helpful to me to be able to dig in and mine the information that's buried in these thousands and perhaps even millions of pages of recorded history and theology within our Pentecostal tradition. The recent upgrade to the Consortium of Pentecostal Archives has been increasingly helpful because now not only does it give you a full text search in which it gives you the link to the particular paper, which you would before have to open and browse through until you found what you had searched for. Now it gives you a real-time sort of screenshot or view into the actual text where it found that key term. And so the technology today is so much better to be able to see without clicking on it, without going to it, what that particular paper or artifact is already highlighting. So it really is so special to be able to see those things in context and be able to use that to quickly access the information that you're looking for. The other thing that's so valuable is that this is a free service to anyone, for pastors or for researchers or for enthusiasts who love to study history. It's free, and all of that is provided free of charge with PDFs you could download to use and to work on it on your own computer and things like that. And so it's extremely helpful for that. So an example of that is in 2021, I published my book, Pentecost in Tulsa. And I was looking for all the information I could find on anything related to Tulsa. So I searched key terms such as church names, cities, the suburb cities of Tulsa. I was able to find and piece together different narratives that come from testimonies of people who are ministering or starting churches in the suburb communities. I was able to look for people. There was some confusion in some of the church histories of the local churches around, and I was able to either confirm or deny those things by finding testimonies of pastors who had written articles or had sent in testimonies of what God was doing in that particular community. So I was able to do so much research and chase down so many questions using the Consortium of Pentecostal Archives. And so it's an extremely valuable resource. I use it all the time. I'm consistently trying to find out what have Pentecostals said, or what do they think about these particular issues. I can also go by period, by different decades, because it has limiters on there where you can choose just a particular denomination, or you can choose a time frame. And so many times there's a bunch of information, and I want to focus just on a certain time frame. So, for example, during World War II, what were they saying about this or about that? You could isolate just those years and get the information. You can also limit by type. I've done a lot of research on the Assemblies of God and the official statements. So having the minute books available has been extremely helpful to help me identify when key decisions were made or different people were involved. And so I can search that. There's also minister directories that are in PDF form in the consortium. And so I can look for people and where they were and what years they were in what cities. And it's such an extremely powerful tool, not only for me as an academic researcher, but for individuals. You could look for family members. You could look for the history of your own church if you're a pastor. There's so many uses for it. It's such a gift to the Pentecostal tradition. It helps us know where we've been, and it's such a helpful piece that is really fueling a greater understanding of our Pentecostal tradition. So I highly recommend it. I use it all the time. I would be nowhere without it, and I'm so grateful to the people who have made this happen, not only the people who've provided funding, but the various directors of the different Pentecostal Charismatic Archives who had the vision to be able to put this together and to be able to see its success and provide so many materials free of charge to the world to be able to utilize. So thank you very much, and I highly recommend it.
Hello, my name is David Roebuck, and I'm the director of the Dixon Pentecostal Research Center in Cleveland, Tennessee. I'm also chairman of the board of directors of the Consortium of Pentecostal Archives, and I'm excited today to be speaking to my friend, Dr. Dan Tomberlin. Dr. Tomberlin is the assistant professor of practical theology at the Pentecostal Theological Seminary, as well as the director of the DMin studies. Thanks for talking to us today, Dr. Tomerlin.
It's a joy to be here, David.
We want to talk about your use of the Consortium of Pentecostal Archives. You've written a couple of books using it. Most recently, an interesting book called Snakes at the Altar, Serpent Handling in the Church of God. Tell us a little bit about how you utilize the Consortium of Pentecostal Archives in order to research and write that book.
Okay, when I began writing the book, it began as a project to look up Pentecostal worship. And I was doing some research. I realized that there were a lot of references to snake handling in the early issues of the Minutes. So I just went to the Consortium Archives, the website, started doing word searches for the word snake, serpent, Mark 16, signs and wonders. Just various words that would be associated with that kind of a study. The website allows you to use certain filters. With those filters, I was able to choose what years I wanted to study, typically within decades. I could also choose what branches of Pentecostalism, so I chose Church of God. And then I could even limit what articles, what type of research I wanted to do. So again, I filtered it to Church of God Evangel. I did the same thing using the Pentecostal Evangel, the same thing using the Pentecostal Holiness Advocate, and was able to retrieve all kinds of articles dealing with snake handling in the early Church of God from about 1912 to 1932.
So if you were to talk to a new researcher who's just becoming familiar with the Consortium of Pentecostal Archives, what kind of tips might you give for them in doing their own research on their particular topic?
The website is really intuitive. So the first thing I would do is suggest get on there and play with it a little bit. Just start clicking, discover the sources that you have. There's hundreds of thousands of documents there. There will be no shortage of material. Learn how to use the filters. Again, you can filter according to decade, to movement, to denomination, what kind of publication, periodicals or books. The filters really help you narrow your search. In my research, over 2 books the last 2 years, I was able to condense months and months of research in just a few weeks. I was able to do my research early in the morning, drinking coffee, sitting in my recliner with my computer in my lap. And I was able to research thousands of pages of Pentecostal archives to be able to get a few hundred hits to be able to find out what I needed to write on. The other thing is just to keep track of what documents that you're sourcing so that you can get your citations correctly. The burden is upon the researcher to make sure that they're keeping records of all the citations. You can copy and paste material straight from a PDF onto your Word document. So, it's just very easy to navigate and to do the research with the website.
Now, once one has done a search and the archives and search engine finds different articles, there is a very nice way in which it highlights
yes
the particular search words in a passage, and one can determine whether or not that passage might be pertinent to what one is
exactly searching. For example, if I'm doing a word search on the word snake, hit the search, set the filters, it would give me hundreds of hits listing the documents. I hit that document, it comes up in a PDF form, and the website highlights my search word. So it's very easy for me to scan through the document and find my search word. Then I can read those sentences or that paragraph associated, make a determination on whether that's something I need or not, and move on to the next one. So it's very, very helpful.
Now, did you use the scissors function to cut and paste out of the articles?
I did. One of the things I would do is pull the PDF up and enlarge it, and if there was an article there, especially if there was a picture there that I wanted to use, I used the scissors function, copied and pasted it directly into my Word document.
Okay. So, How much time do you think it saved you using the Consortium of Pentecostal Archives as distinct from research prior to its being available, especially with the search engine that we have today?
Literally months. The snake book on snake handling, Snakes at the Altar, I actually completed the research, the writing, and publication within 3 months. If I would have had to go through evangel articles one by one, reading through them, searching for articles and pertinent information, it would have taken many months, maybe a year or so. So the archive, the web-based archive, is a treasure trove of easy-to-mine original sources for Pentecostal study.
So give us a little bit about the highlights of your book, Snakes at the Altar, and then how someone can purchase that book if they would like to read it.
Basically what I did is did the research and discovered where snake handling began, the people involved. I talk about those 20 years where snake handling was it was a thing for the Church of God. A.J. Tomlinson, F.J. Lee promoted it. There was this myth, I guess, that it was a very small group of people, very limited. But when you begin reading through these evangels for about 10 years, you discover that it was a minority within the Church of God, but it was a large minority, it was an influential minority, and it was a scattered minority. It was scattered all over the southeast and even as far west as Arizona. By 1932, the Church of God made a change. Article was published, an editorial was published in the Evangel denouncing snake handling. So after 20 years of trauma, 20 years of controversy, the leaders of the church really took a step against the snake handling movement. The reason that was important to me was not just to research to get the history, but I wanted to ask myself, and I wanted the reader to ask, what kind of biblical hermeneutic, what kind of reading of Scripture would cause early, sincere Pentecostal believers to adopt snake handling as a practice in the church? And so I talk about having a right hermeneutic and having a wrong hermeneutic, and how Pentecostals should more properly read Scripture. Everybody that's read it has loved it. People have been surprised. But it's got great reviews, and if you want a copy of it, if you're in Cleveland, Pathway Press has copies at the Pathway Bookstore, or you can order them from Amazon.com. Just search my name or search the book Snakes at the Altar, and you can have it in a couple of days.
Well, it's a fascinating book. It tells us a lot about our history, but it also looks at biblical interpretation and hermeneutics. So thank you, Dr. Tomblin, for your excellent book, and thank you for sharing with us about the importance of the Consortium of Pentecostal Archives.
Thank you for having me.